Fellow wealth warriors, I have someone special here today. We're going to go through some of the things about business and owning a business, and I want you to see his operation. Take a look at this. All right, I have Joel Wiland here, owner of J. David's Jewelry, one of the largest jewelry stores here in Oklahoma, and I am honored to have him with us today. Joel, thanks for being with us, man.
Happy to be here. Thank
It's
you.
awesome. I have a lot of questions for you, man, and this is going to be pretty awesome because you're one of the best business owners I know. So this is going to be really neat, and I'm so happy that my viewers get a chance to actually get just a couple minutes here with you. First of all, you started your business when?
Well, I was had not turned 22 years old yet, so that was the first part of it that I had no clue what I was doing.
So only 10 years ago then, because you're only
That's correct.
You know.
That's correct. But that would have been at this point 27 years ago.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So when you started your business, tell me what it was like. The fear, the anxiety. Tell me.
Hell.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I mean, tell me.
No, in reality, so the industry is the jewelry industry, and I was a bench jeweler, and I was making $9 an hour, and I went to the owner of the business and asked if I could have a raise. He said I'd been with him at that point 5.5 years. My wife stayed at home with our 1-year-old son, and when I left that morning, we had discussed it. I'm going in asking for a raise. And at the time, he said, you're a great employee. We'll give you $1 an hour. And this was in '94. And as grateful as I was for that, it wasn't going to cut it. And he asked what I needed. I said, I need $15 an hour for a skilled trade. And if I can't make that, I'm making $17 an hour at night waiting tables. So he said, man, that's not in the budget. I said, I guess I need to turn in my notice. And he said, you can't do that. You have a wife and a child at home. And I said, well, that's what I need to do. So I went home, told my wife, Kendra, that she said, well, how'd the raise go? And I said, not as planned. So to that, she was amazing. So that would be one of the first things that I would say that as a kind of, I would say, born and bred entrepreneur, that the support that you have behind you is one of the biggest keys. And most people can't handle the stress or the pressure that a true entrepreneur can put on a relationship, because that can be a great deal of stress. So to that, my wife went to work, got a full-time job. We started our jewelry business with 3 rings and $500. So we didn't have money. Our house payment was $342 a month. We had no car payments, so our cars were paid for. So we didn't have to make a lot of money, and that was really good because we didn't make any money the first 5 years. But I worked 120 hours a week. So there's 168 hours in a week. And so often, today more than ever, I really feel people say, I want to be that entrepreneur. One of the best stories I've ever heard of that is, what does it take to be successful? So this wealthiest man in China, true story, young man comes up to him and said, what's the key to your success? He said, do you really want to know? He said, yes. He said, meet me on the beach tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. So they show up. They both have their $20,000 tailored suits on. They're standing on the beach, and he says, are you sure you want to know the key to success? And he said, yes. So he says, follow me. So he starts walking into the ocean. And the young man's like, you're not serious. And he goes, I thought you wanted to know the key to success. And he said, I do. He goes, well, then follow me. So they get out to their knees, past their waist, up to their chest. They're neck deep. And he goes, are you sure you want to know? And he goes, yes. So he swoops his legs out from underneath him, holds him underwater until he takes his last breath, drags him up on the shore, gets him breathing again. He goes, what do you think you're doing? And he goes, you will not be successful as an entrepreneur until you're willing to fight as hard as you did for that last breath. Most people quit.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So a lot of people, what would you say the percentage of people that actually succeed in business would be?
3%.
So tell me what you feel like in that 3%, where do you feel like you fall? 1%, 2%? Are you in the 3%?
I don't think I fall in part of the 3%.
Okay, I love that.
No, I never. When I was 6 years old, I wanted a Hot Wheel track, and I didn't grow up in a family with money, and I fit the Hot Wheel track cost $90. Might as well have been $1 million for my family, and I saved up my quarter for milk money. I bought some red ribbon, got some mistletoe out of a tree, put a red ribbon around it, went door to door and sold it for $1, made $100 in 2 days at 6 years old. Nobody taught me how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard once there's roughly 7 billion ideas that have yet to be thought of. So many people think, well, I just don't have that creative mind. We were literally made to create. So to that, you only don't have the ideas because you don't take time to think of them.
Wow, that's good.
They're
That's
out
deep.
there. But what are you doing to grow that? My wife just the other day, she said, I'm not very creative. And I'm like, you're wrong. She made the most incredible pie that I've ever seen. And I said, how'd you come up with that? And she goes, I don't know. I've never seen it before. And I'm like, you're one of the most creative people I know. What do you do to grow that? And most people, they're either on their phone, they're watching Netflix, they're not growing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they stop at that point. That should never stop. How do you continue
So
to
let me
grow?
dig into that for just a second. So how do you grow? How do you do that for our listeners that are like, where do I start? How do I start growing? How do I fuel that vision or fuel that kind of creativity?
Man, that's a great question. Place where I've found the most growth is Golden Corral all-you-can-eat buffet. No.
Right. Definitely grow there, I think, yeah.
No, sorry. But seriously, reading, I mean, you can't ever stop reading. That's something that I wish that I was even better at it. And I could go book after book after book.
Yeah.
But a book that I read about a year ago was Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster. Book I'd highly recommend. And one of the things it said in it that really kind of punched me in the face was I tried to read a book a month or listen audio, and to that he literally says in it, so many people try and read like a book a month. I'm like, okay, he's talking to me. He said, what if you read rather than a book a month, that after a year, what have you retained from those 12 books? What if you read that one book 12 times? So there's only so much you can pack into your brain.
Yeah.
Or at least mine anyway.
Especially when you're a full-time entrepreneur.
Yeah. So what is it that you're truly adding to yourself? But it's got to be something you enjoy too. So at some point, you quit when it becomes painful long enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I love stories. Old man had this dog 15 years old. Gets up every morning, sits on their front porch, drinks his cup of coffee, reads his newspaper, and the dog's just howling the whole time, all day long. Dog never stops howling until he gets up, goes inside for the night. Neighbor usually comes over, finally says, man, what is up with your dog? He won't shut up all day long. He says, craziest thing, best dog I've ever had. He goes, he's old. Wakes up, sits down in the same place every day on the porch, never moves. And he goes, crazy thing is that there's this nail that's worked its way up where he sits down all the time. And it hurts him. So that's why he howls all day long. He goes, well, why doesn't he get up and move? He goes, I guess it doesn't hurt him bad enough yet. And that's how so many people go through life, is if something doesn't hurt them bad enough, they don't move.
And they don't change. They just tolerate it.
Yep. So that's a big part of how do you grow forward, is what I like to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's continually putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. Because if you're comfortable, you're not growing.
Amen, brother. I love that. That's awesome. So you have created a culture in your business like I've never seen. Tell me about your culture in your business, because this is really cool.
That's a great question. So I'm always looking at other organizations that I believe have been successful in building culture through teams, And then even when you duplicate something, that's something very often that is lost is culture as you grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big part of my vision is as we grew, it was the number one thing on my list as far as what is most important. And to me, it was culture. It wasn't dollars in the door. How do I grow my business without saturating my culture? So I looked at Chick-fil-A, one of the places. I flew to Atlanta, spent a day. It's pretty cool when you can sit down with the owner of a $10 billion company, and he tells you how he keeps his culture. I went to Life Church, spent a day with them. They opened 31 campuses in, I believe, 7 different states, and their culture doesn't change. How do you do that? So a couple principles that I have in my company is I hire character, I train talent. I don't hire talent for the most part. Now, if they have talent with character, bonus.
Yeah.
But you can't train character. So that is the number one thing I look for when bringing on a new team member is what's their character? Mm-hmm. Do they fit our culture? Because you can't let anything saturate or affect your culture. At least, so that's something I'm very protective of. Have been, will continue to be as we continue to grow.
So tell me, I'm going to dig in on that just a minute, because in every business you have those bad apples. Mm-hmm. You have those guys that you don't always know they're giving a bad attitude in front of the boss, but they're doing it and maybe spreading this or that throughout the employee structure. Mm-hmm. And how do you locate that? What do you look for? And then, of course, how do you get rid of it?
I mean, it usually shows itself really fast.
Okay.
And it's typically a lesson that's learned through pain. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you identify it, you get rid of it. It's not again, you can't train character. So when someone's character doesn't go with your culture, you don't try and fix it. You remove it.
That's good. Because there's thousands of people out there that could probably take their place,
mm-hmm.
and yet they don't know it. They think they're special. And they're going to be doing everything they need
and
to do.
that was one way I love people. Yeah. I mean, that's my job is loving people. It's actually our purpose statement. And to that, it's like, I really like this person. How do I do this to them? And you feel, and then I was able to change my mindset is as long as I keep them in a place they're not supposed to be, I'm hurting them. So I'm not doing it to them, I'm doing it for them. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, as long as they're in a place they're not supposed to be, which is my business, my company can't do what it's supposed to do, but I'm also, my job as the owner of my company is to protect my team.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing my job if I allow them to stay.
So what's so interesting about your business is that you have everyone memorize their mission statement and their purpose. Yeah. And that is so interesting and so critical, I think, in business today because it gets everyone pulling on the same rope. Tell me how you came up with that and why would you even think about that?
Yeah, that's a great story, Chris. So it was probably 5-6 years ago. We had a company meeting and we had a mission statement just like everybody does. And it, said to be the best, to do the best, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't tell you what it was. But I asked our staff together to quote it. Well, nobody had it memorized. I didn't even have it memorized. So they're all looking at each other. I'm like, okay, I get it. You don't have it memorized. But you know where it's at, which is at the front of our employee manual, which you read the day you're hired and you never look at it again since then.
Right.
So I'm like, can you guys all go get it so we can read it together? Well, nobody keeps their employee manual. So I knew they couldn't do it. So I'm like, all right, we're going to throw it in the trash. And I said, because if you don't know it, it means nothing. And I said, but today we're changing our mission statement to our purpose statement. And our purpose statement as of today and this day going forward is to show unconditional love through our people, our process, and our product, which is jewelry. So from that, understanding they never get out of order. And if you put one before the other, you don't know this purpose statement, you don't work here anymore. Why is that? Well, first of all, highly recommend another book. Simon Sinek, I believe it's starting with the why, is the name of the book. If you don't know your why, then you have no business doing what you're doing, and you will fail. So often people say, well, to make money. Well, no, that's not what your why.
Right.
So, so to that, if our purpose is to show unconditional love through our people, our process, and our product in that order, the last thing we're doing is the sale. But yet we're one of the most successful people in our industry that exist. When the industry focuses on the product, that's the last in our list. So what I love about my industry and what we do, it's a 6,000-year-old industry, one of the oldest industries that exists today, even older than banking. And to that, understanding jewelry has never been about a product. It's been about a form of communication, a transfer of emotion, meaning it's about people. In reality, that's what life is.
Yeah.
So when you focus on a product versus a need, then you're focusing on dollars, versus when you truly have a servant's heart and you serve somebody to grow them for better, and it can be a benefit to both, and there happens to be money involved, everybody wins. Right. So nobody gets taken advantage of, and everybody grows together. So that's our purpose statement in a nutshell.
So I'm going to expand on that a little bit, because sometimes when we are growing a business, we don't necessarily begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. And most people don't think about that end. They just think about the beginning and what I'm going to do, and I'm overwhelmed and all that. When you begin, and you're probably one of the most giving people I know. And I want you to talk about that and how critical that is in building a business, because as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most key things that you could absolutely do. 100%. And most people think, oh, when I become wealthy, I'll give. Go down that road for me.
So when our house payment was $342 a month, and we made $5,000 our first year in business, that was over a 12-month period.
Right.
We gave. And, often someone says, well, how did you afford to give? I couldn't afford not to, was my principle.
Right on.
So another great book, highly recommend. Best book I believe you can ever read on money. You're the money guy, so I'll let you argue that.
Well, that's my book. You can probably read that.
That one, yes. But The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yes, good book. I love that.
Great book. And there's a principle in that book that if everybody lived by that principle, there would be no debt in the world. Wouldn't exist. So the principle is to live on 70% of what you make. Invest 10%, grow yourself with 10%, and give 10%. And these are laws that can't be broken. So I believe there is, just like gravity, if you throw a ball in the air, it will come down.
Yeah.
Giving is a law that when you give, it comes back in some shape or form. And I can't tell you how many times where we gave beyond our means and what was received from it, and not always money. So again, not attaching money to everything is always greater than the gift given.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
To that just drives me to how do we give more.
So you've built this great business, great people. Your products, in my opinion, are second to none. I don't go to anyone else as far as jewelry goes, because I know when I walk in, I'm going to get the best quality diamond, or the best quality gold, or best quality anything. Joel, where do you go from here? What are your goals from here?
Man, I've always had the saying, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. We've never tried to be the cheapest. I've got a saying is, to be the cheapest, you have to be the worst in something. And I want to be the best in everything. So we will always be the best for your money. Never the cheapest, but always the best value. So to that, where do I go from here? I've been in the industry for 34 years now. And I figured it out. If you figure my 120 hour a week that I worked for about 5 years, I've put in about 55 years in my industry. And I love what I do. And it's what I will do the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. But rather than working in a store, today I do it working outside my store. And it's by investing in others. And to that, whether it be people directly in my industry, but I love business. Yeah. Business is just what the best way I explain it is for people to understand is you remember what it was like when you went to bed Christmas Eve when you were 10 years old. You get in bed, you can't close your eyes, you're so excited about the presents you're going to get tomorrow. You can't go to sleep. And then you're trying to figure out, do I get out of bed? Do I see if I can see Santa? I mean, maybe if I stay up long enough, I might get a glimpse of him. And then you don't get any sleep that night. You finally go to sleep. You wake up the next morning before anybody else wakes up. You're waking your mom and dad up. It's like, it's time to get out of bed. It's time to get out of bed. This is what I feel like 365 days a year now. Because every night I go to bed, it's like tomorrow morning's Christmas.
That's awesome.
And it's just getting to work with incredible people, watching them grow, have those aha moments. I got to work with a gentleman a couple weeks ago. He's starting a new business. He's never been in business for himself. And I asked him, I said, let me see your pro forma. He asked what that was. And I said, well, it's a roadmap of what you're planning on doing. And he goes, I'm not familiar with that. And just like you said, you have to have an end in mind. Doesn't mean that's where you're going to end up, but at least it sets your direction. So if somebody asked me 20 years ago, where will you be in 20 years? Mm-hmm. No way could I have told them I'd be sitting here being interviewed on your success. I would not have been able to say that. In the same way, where will I be from 10 years? I don't have a clue. I have a direction of where I'm going. So to that, it is, I love what my passion today is creating something new and watching it grow in someone else's hands. And so cool. To that, that's a quote from Ronald Reagan. So, it's not original.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think that most people don't understand when they're going into business themselves is they may be the best plumber on the planet. They may be the best jeweler on the planet. They may be the best whatever, but they're not the best businessman. So you can actually go out there and do all these things with your hands or create something or be this, but they don't know how to put that into a business plan. That's typically where people fall short. They get into business. I have this great idea. I'm really good at it. I'm going to go in business. Why do you think they fail?
So often, I believe a lot of failure comes through adversity, and it's quitting. And, you know, if you fall down 6 times, you get up 7. It's not that you're going to fall down. I had a gentleman a couple weeks ago I'm talking to. He goes, you don't know what failure's like. And I said, why would you say that? And he goes, because I've known you for over 20 years and you've never failed. And I said, no, I just don't publicize them.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And I said, but I'd never be where I'm at without all my failures.
Dude, that's so profound for people to hear.
What I love is over the years I've learned to fail faster, which is a key thing to learn. Because the longer you keep from failing in something, the stronger chance it has of killing you. Yeah. So if you can learn how to fail faster, and to that, I've never had one what I would call failure that I didn't grow from it. So because of that, I took something away, I'm better for it. How is that a failure?
Right.
So to that, it's a mindset too of that failure didn't even hurt me. It grew me. I'm better because of it. A lot of times they hurt, whether it be the pocketbook, more often than not, they hurt emotionally. You know, if you're married, they can hurt a relationship. If you have kids, they can hurt kids. So a lot of decisions you make affect other people. And to that, the term that I use is you have to have grit. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a term you're very familiar with. Military. That's one of the things that our military trains is grit, because you're always going against the grain. It's always a fight. It's always a battle. And if you don't have that grit, you're not going to make it.
And people just wear you down. People will wear you down.
Or they can fire you up. They can bring you to life.
So you got to steal their energy and just keep you going, right? So I want you to tell. I'm going to wrap up here because I know your time is important to you. I'm going to wrap up here. Would you tell me maybe a good, touching story where you made a difference in someone's life that was just absolutely life-changing for you? And I know you give in audience, when I'm talking to Joel here, you got to understand he gives to veterans organizations. He gives to just about anything you could possibly imagine that's worth a cause. Not to say you need to contact him about giving. I'm talking to him about the principle of it, but he walks it out, and that's so neat for me to see, because it encourages me as a fellow business owner. I want to know what he's doing. I want to know where he's going, because he's researched the people like crazy. Soldier's Wish and Folds of Honor and all the different companies that you've given to for veterans. Thank you, by the way, from a veteran. I mean, my gosh, for someone to give like you give, we all should aspire to be that way. But is there a particular story that kind of just, I don't know, that really means something to you that you'd like to share with everybody?
I would say in honor of Wealth Warrior, I'll use, because I truly believe someday I'll write a book on the stories, because there's hundreds.
I really wish you would, because it's so cool.
But one that comes to mind is I had a gentleman in Afghanistan, and he wanted to propose, and he had no idea when he was coming home, if he would come home. And we had a little bit of a relationship. And once I heard the story, I was able to contact him, and I offered, I don't know how you put it, but I said, can I be your hands? Can I be your voice? Can I be your feet? He said, what do you mean? And I said, I know you're there, but I'm here. Can I do the proposal for you?
Wow.
And to that, I mean, what an honor that was. But when he did come home, he was on a Black Hawk, was what he did, and he brought me a picture of his team flying in the Black Hawk with the American flag from it, and then presented me the American flag, and I'm like,
wow.
Again, I can't even put words to that.
That's
and
awesome.
There's hundreds of those.
So cool, man. So cool. And I think the impact, most people don't think that the jewelry industry makes such an impact, but when you get involved in people and the things that jewelry is surrounded by and what people surround jewelry with, the concept is amazing, and what they actually, what it means to people. I mean, I would say, number one, the heirlooms that you get passed down from generation to generation, it's not furniture, even though a lot of people like the antiques. It's jewelry. It's grandma's or great-great-grandma's jewelry that you're proposing with and things like that. It's amazing to me how much emotion is actually charged there.
One of the coolest things we've ever got to make was a lady had brought me some plastic buttons, and she said, can you make cuff links and tie tacks out of these buttons? How much is a plastic button worth?
Not much.
10 cents.
Yeah.
So I said, you bet. And she said, they have to be nice. So I'm like, okay, how do you make a 10-cent button nice?
Right.
So she said, I'd like to put gold and diamonds with it. So now we're talking a substantial amount of money as we're embellishing these plastic buttons. And this was off the last shirt that her son had worn before he passed away of fighting cancer for years, and said that he was the greatest leader their family had ever had at 10 years old.
Wow.
And these buttons would then be worn by the men in the family.
Wow.
Since he led them.
That is amazing.
And to have value where there's no value is what I love. And to be able to find that value, it's never about money.
Yeah.
And when you understand that everybody's put on this earth. They have gifts and talents that they might not even know that they have. They just need somebody to help them identify them. Mm-hmm. And they can run circles around people trying to do the same thing that don't have their gifts and talents. They just have never been in the right place.
That's right.
So
makes perfect sense. Any final advice that you would give someone who is looking to open their own business, someone that is...
Don't get in the jewelry industry.
Right, exactly. There might be veterans listening. There might be civilians listening. Veteran transitioning out of the military, wanting to get into the jewelry business to work for someone like you. The big thing is what kind of advice would you tell them to bring with them when they come, as far as mentally, both as an entrepreneur and maybe even working for an entrepreneur? Is there some key elements that you look for there? And then obviously when you're going to talk to somebody, because you visit with new entrepreneurs all the time because you're very interested in what they're doing. Mm-hmm. You're very interested in helping them any way you can. Give me some attributes about what maybe, and then maybe a couple of things that might be, don't do this, Is there any don't do's, absolutely don't do?
I think my biggest don't do is when I sit down with someone and they're asking my advice on something and I start to say something and go, oh yeah, I know.
Do you?
Like, I guess we're done then.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how do you know when it's taken me 34 years to figure it out? You haven't spent a day doing it. So I'm like, but good luck.
Right.
Because I love to say I'm 34 years into it. I'm just now starting to scratch the surface. I hope I'm going to have it figured out in the next 34. So to that, I would just say, again, just be a sponge. Soak up everything you can everywhere you go. There's nobody you can't learn something from. You never discount anyone for what they have to offer. And man, I could tell stories. But to that, I'm always looking to add to our team. In fact, this morning we had a team meeting and I kind of took everybody by surprise and I said, guys, I need your help in the next 6 months. We have 9 positions that we have to fill. And I said, they're not optional. And this is not anybody being replaced. Just to make sure everybody's, nobody's being replaced. That's 9 new positions we're having opening up in the next 6 months that we need to hire for now. And to that, like I said, we hire character. Mm-hmm. And we hire, everybody has God-given gifts. And until you've actually used those, there are people that you'll meet them, and I know that this has happened to you. It's like, oh, so what do you do? And they're like, oh, I work at the ABC plant.
Yeah.
Like, dang, you must make a ton of money. Like, no, not really. It's like, well, I just figured, why? And then they asked, why would you ask? I was like, well, obviously you're not happy what you're doing, but then the only reason somebody would stay where they're doing what they're doing and they're not happy is because they're making so much money. And most people walk through life like that. And they're like, well, this is just what I've always done. I don't have to be happy.
Yeah.
And it's like when you do something you love, you never go to work. And it is so rewarding that rather than it draining you, it's the best drug you can ever take.
And I'm telling you what, I don't know how we would finish any better than that right there. Joel, thank you so much for coming on today.
It's an honor.
This is going to bless so many people, and we hope to have you back again someday soon.
And pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, man.